The hive was alive from sunrise to moonlight, a golden blur of wings and work. Every bee buzzed with purpose, their small bodies coated in dusted pollen, their legs heavy with nectar. To them, there was no time for rest, no moment to pause. Honey was everything. Rows of perfect hexagons filled with liquid gold shimmered under the sunlight streaming through the hive's cracks. The workers hummed in synchronized rhythm, collecting, packing, sealing, their queen's command echoing in every movement, produce, produce, produce. But in their frenzy, the hive grew cluttered. Wax flakes littered the floors, old combs sagged with age, and mold began to creep along the walls where no one stopped to clean. The air that once smelled sweet and fresh turned heavy and sour. Still, the bees ignored it. "Just one more trip," said worker 337 as she brushed past another. "The meadow is bursting with clover, we can't waste a single drop." No one noticed the larvae struggling to breathe in the stale air. No one tended to the corners where spiderwebs gathered. The guards stood weary at the entrance, their wings sticky with spilled nectar. The hive, once a place of perfect harmony, now pulsed like a heart beating too fast, alive, yes, but sick with its own ambition. And though the honey shone brighter than ever, something deep within the hive had begun to crack. Chapter 2: The Golden Burden. The hive had never held so much honey. Every cell gleamed, bursting at the edges, capped and stacked in golden layers that shimmered like treasure in the sun. From the outside, it looked like a monument to success, a kingdom of endless plenty. But inside, the air was heavy with tension. The worker bees buzzed louder now, their hum sharp and uneven. Wings beat faster, tempers flared. There were too many tasks, too few willing to do them. "We need more storage," cried one. "Make more comb," shouted another. But the young, began a nurse bee, before abandoning her own sentence to rush out the entrance, lured by the scent of fresh clover fields. One by one, the nurse bees left their duties, abandoning their brood to chase nectar. The soft cries of the larvae went unanswered. Their wax cells grew cold. Without care, many began to fade. But the foragers didn't look back. They were drunk on their own success, the thrill of filling the hive faster, flying farther, returning with heavier loads. The idea of enough had vanished. Honey had become more than food, it was pride, power, proof of worth. And so they worked harder. They skipped the flowers that once brought them joy, they no longer paused to rest their wings on a petal or taste the sweetness of the pollen for themselves. Each bee flew with one thought only, more. Inside the hive, the floor was slick with spilled nectar. Dead mites floated in puddles of wax. Mold crept higher up the combs. No one stopped to clean, no one cared to. The golden walls began to darken, sticky and neglected. The queen, deep within her chamber, sensed the imbalance. Her brood count dropped with each sunrise, but even she could not halt the endless race. The hive's heartbeat had changed, faster, harsher, desperate. The bees had forgotten the fragrance of flowers, the feel of sunlight on their backs, the rhythm of nature that once guided their every move. All that remained was hunger, not for survival, but for more honey than they could ever need. And as the honey rose, so too did the silence of the nursery. The hive was rich, yet emptier than ever. Chapter 3: The Spoiled Harvest. The hive gleamed in the autumn sun, a golden tower of achievement. From the outside, it was magnificent. The air shimmered with the sweet, heavy scent of honey, and every bee who entered felt a rush of pride. They had done it. They had built the richest hive anyone could imagine. But inside, the celebration was short-lived. The walls were darkened with decay. Honey seeped from broken combs, oozing down in slow, sticky rivers. The air was thick and sour. What once smelled of nectar now reeked of rot. The bees landed awkwardly, their feet sticking to the floor. Some of the cells were filled with spoiled honey, mold climbing through the wax like ivy. Worker 337, who had once buzzed proudly about just one more trip, landed on a sagging frame and stared. "Look at it all," she whispered. "So much, but so ruined." Nearby, the nurse bees, those who hadn't fled their duties entirely, hovered over empty brood cells. The young that should have filled the hive with soft humming were gone. Silence filled the nursery where laughter once lived. The queen's attendants whispered nervously. Even she had grown quiet, her once steady rhythm of laying eggs now faltering. "What happened to us?" murmured one bee. "We were the envy of the meadow." A forager returned from the fields, wings tired and dusted with the last of the season's pollen. She looked around and saw what she had ignored for months, the cracked combs, the mold, the waste. "We forgot," she said softly. "We forgot what the flowers were for." The hive fell still. They had chased honey, blinded by ambition, until they'd forgotten the joy of gathering it. They had turned nectar, a gift of life, into a symbol of greed. The young had been neglected, the hive left filthy, the spirit of community replaced by exhaustion and envy. Outside, the fields were fading. The bright clovers were gone, and the days grew shorter. Winter whispered at the edge of the wind. The bees shivered as the truth settled in. They had been so busy building wealth, they'd forgotten to build home. And in that moment, something changed. A spark of humility, a flicker of reflection. The bees began to murmur, not of honey, but of balance, of care, of cleaning, and rest. They looked at the spoiled stores and realized that no amount of gold could warm a cold hive. For the first time in many moons, a few bees left to visit the flowers again, not to harvest, but simply to breathe. The hive had fallen, yes, but perhaps, in the ashes of their greed, something purer could grow. Chapter 4: The Season of Balance. When the first chill of autumn touched the air, the hive was quiet, not with despair this time, but with calm determination. The bees had seen what their greed had done. Now, they moved with purpose, not panic. Worker 337 brushed away the last of the spoiled honey, humming softly as she worked. Around her, bees scrubbed the walls with resin and wax, sweeping out debris, patching holes, rebuilding the nursery. The hive that once echoed with frantic buzzing now thrummed with steady, peaceful rhythm, like a heartbeat finally finding its pace again. The nurse bees returned to their duties, caring gently for the young. Their soft songs filled the brood chambers once more, nurturing hope and warmth where silence had reigned. The foragers flew out each day not to conquer the fields, but to visit them, lingering on the flowers, tasting their sweetness, basking in the sunlight before returning with just enough nectar to share. No one spoke of more. They spoke instead of enough. They stored their honey carefully this time, not in overflowing greed but in gratitude, each drop a promise of comfort for the cold months ahead. The hive sparkled once again, not with excess, but with care. Clean, strong, and alive. The queen began to hum again, her rhythm restored, her attendants dancing in joy. The hive thrived, not from endless work, but from balance. At sunset, as golden light poured through the entrance, the bees gathered at the edge of the hive. The fields shimmered in the distance, fading into fall's warm hues. They breathed in deeply, savoring the scent of the flowers they had once ignored. Worker 337 turned to her sisters and smiled. "We were so busy making honey," she said, "we forgot to live." Now, they lived. Each bee found peace in purpose, not in greed, but in care. They worked, they rested, they cherished their hive and one another. And when the first frost came, the hive stood ready, strong, clean, and united. The honey was sweet, the air was fresh, and the hive was alive once more, not from endless striving, but from balance, gratitude, and the simple joy of being. Winter would come, but this time, they would meet it together, not as tired workers, but as a family. And in that quiet, golden hive, they finally understood. The sweetness of life isn't found in what you store, it's found in how you live. The end.